Hey, what's going on everyone? In this review, we'll be looking at one of the most popular suits out there, the Wing Gundam Zero, Endless Waltz. You know, despite how popular this mobile suit is, this is the only master grade for it, and it came out way back in 2004. This leaves a lot of people wondering if this is still a good way to add the Wing Zero to their collection. So, let's find out. We'll be reviewing this master grade Gundam in 4 categories: the build, appearance, articulation, and gimmicks, / transformation of course. We'll be giving each a score from 1 to 5, so at the end we can tally it all up for an average score. Hopefully this review can help you decide if you should pick up this model kit. Alright, now let's get right into this build. First thing that hits me here is how basic this build is. I mean, there's absolutely no moving pistons or sliding pieces, and outside of the knee and shoulder there's no transformation mechanisms. This build is about as straightforward as it gets. However, as Wing Gundam kits tend to skew towards newer fans, I don't think this simplicity is a real negative. Pretty much anyone at any skill level could pick this kit up and have it looking pretty decent within a day or two. Honestly, I'd say it's even easier than the Wing Gundam TV version. These wings are really the only part of this build that might give beginners issues. However, the instructions lay everything out pretty well, so they aren't too much of a hassle. Just remember to use the exact piece that it asks for, since each of these feathers is unique. Speaking of the feathers, they're actually made of this thick rubber material, meaning you're never at any risk of breaking them. That's some real forward thinking on Bandai's part. Moving on to the armor, you'll notice how solid this part separation is, and aside from these pretty well hidden seam lines on the shoulders and wings, there's nothing screaming for cement. I will say some of the nubs can be a little harsh on this kit, specifically on this dark blue. If you follow the instructions exactly, you'll notice most of them wind up on the back of the kit. But still, there are some pretty noticeable nubs on the shoulders, skirts, and arms. The only mandatory painting location on this kit is this top camera lens. You get a decent looking green sticker for it, but in the actual anime it's supposed to be purple. Thankfully it's a separate clear piece, so it's only a 2-minute job to get anime accurate. With that and some basic panel lining, you'll have a pretty solid looking Wing Zero. However, as this model kit is a decade and a half old, there is still a couple optional places you're going to want to detail up. Here are a few of the touch-ups I did. First up, I used gray paint for some of the thicker panel lines and tick marks, specifically these vents on the feet, the squares and panel lines on the side of the leg, some of these lines on the arms, and lastly these vents on the side of the head. All these sections would look fine with basic panel lining, but using a gray Gundam marker was just so quick and easy I couldn't resist. I may have gone a little overboard with it actually, as I also used it on these really thick panel lines on the outer wings. Other than that, I replaced the green sticker on the chest jewel with full-on paint. It comes as a green sticker you put underneath a clear dome. However, I much prefer this more anime-accurate solid look, so that's what I went with. You could also easily replace the green stickers on the forearm cameras with paint, since they're both separate clear pieces. But the stickers here look fine, so I kinda got lazy and skipped over them. And that about does it for the build. It's probably one of the most boring master grades I've ever built. Of course, seeing how this kit is often bought by beginners, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'll give this build an average score of 4 out of 5. All you newer Gunpla fans out there have nothing to worry about with this kit. Moving on to the appearance. Out of the gate, let's tackle the elephant in the room here. Everyone is always talking about how they hate the proportions of this kit. It's pretty easy to find weird hunched over poses that make his head look too small, shoulders too large, and of course the legs way too long. However, having posed this kit myself, I have to disagree here. I mean, don't get me wrong, the proportions here aren't perfect by any means, but I found it really isn't too hard to get this guy looking good. It's all about the pose you put him in. Standing straight up, he can look kinda awkward, but taking an extra 10 seconds to spread the legs apart, pop the chest up, and point the head down, and he starts looking really solid. You have to remember that this is a Katoki designed suit, so you have to pose it like one, you know? Anyway, the wings really do a good job of bulking this kit up. Once you get them into a good position, they become the star of this show. They're just so massive, like you could fit 3 or 4 master grades in this wingspan. If you put this guy into a good angelic pose, he can easily be the most popular kit on your shelf. The colors here are just great too. The white is extremely bright, yet it isn't so glossy that it becomes toyish. At first I was nervous about this dark blue, but you know, it actually looks pretty great. It really adds to that snowy wintertime vibe Endless Waltz had. The pure yellow and dark red also complement it very well. These are just great colors all around. Like the 2.0 kits that started coming out a few years later, there really aren't too many panel lines here either. This kit could have gone full 90s high grade, but nope, it sticks to a really clean anime accurate design. It looks really amazing. The stickers here are pretty solid too. Of course, the first sheet has your basic caution signs, but it also has a few stylized names and model numbers, which is always appreciated. The second sheet of decals is all dry transfer. You get some amazing model numbers that you can put pretty much anywhere you want on this kit. I'm thinking most people are going to want to put these on the wings though. The appearance here is pretty great. There's nice colors, good decals, and no needless panel lines. However, the proportions seem to be hit or miss for some people. Again though, it's really up to the pose you put them in. I'll give this appearance a near perfect score of 4.5 out of 5. I'm sure a 2.0 of some kind would make the flaws in these proportions more obvious, but as it stands, they're nowhere near the kit killer I was led to believe. Now let's see how his articulation holds up. As always, let's start at the feet. You get a very solid downward tilt from these toes, perfect for some angelic aerial poses. The ankles are the standard double ball joint, so he can stand pretty much anywhere you need. This front piece can move independently by the way, which is kinda cool. You get a great 180-degree bend from the knee, and this front section can move independently for the transformation too. Unlike the usual moving armor piece on the leg, this actually isn't connected to the knee bend, so you can move it entirely on its own. It's really strange. The knees can bend inwards for the transformation. As interesting as that is, it kinda just makes it hard to get the legs straight. The hips are the old style ball and socket. Thankfully it's a pretty unrestricted joint, so you get great kicks, some okay splits, and a bit more twist than you would expect. All of the skirts are independent, except for the back skirt, which moves as one unit. Moving on up, the chest connects to the waist with a pretty solid ball joint, so you get decent all-around movement. There's also a joint inside the chest that allows for some basic ab crunches. It's just perfect for getting that katoki pose. The shoulders can be a little finicky since they're hooked up to a rail for the transformation. They tend to slide down whenever you move the arm, which can get kind of annoying. The shoulder joint itself has a combination of hinges that allow for a solid 45-degree pop-out, in addition to the usual 360-degree spin. Moving down to the arm, you get the usual 360-degree spin on top, and a solid 180-degree bend from the elbow. The shoulder arm does get in the way a little bit. You get a single set of hands with this kit, and unfortunately they're just the usual trigger finger split with no pegs. You do get a second set in gray for some reason, but they're just a color swap, probably some leftover parts from reusing runners of the Wing Gundam version Katoki. Lastly, the head is on a decent ball joint, and the neck is a pretty solid forwards and backwards hinge, so you get most of the movement you want, plus he can look up and down pretty well. Now let's take a look at these wings. They're actually fairly complex. There's probably a dozen hinges and pegs across these 4 wings. The result being you can get each of these wings into just about any position you could ask for. They're really amazing. Bandai also threw in a few extra joints in there as well, like having these smaller wings open up and these larger wings spread open to reveal some small details. These front feathers on the larger wings can also swing forwards and backwards on their own. Each of these feathers is independent by the way, so if you're like me, most of your time posing this guy is going to be spent trying to get all these feathers lined up just right. As cool as all these joints are, this complexity does have a downside. Unfortunately on my kit, this major joint here is extremely loose, so his right wing is constantly swinging out of place. Even though this is just my kit, I can't help but think the odds of any one of these dozen or so joints being off on any given kit is fairly high. You'll probably want some modeling glue on hand when you build this guy, just in case one of your joints needs some tightening. And that's it for the articulation. It's pretty solid all around. The suit itself can pull off most of the poses you want. This complexity can be a detriment though, so don't be surprised if one of your joints is loose. I'll give these gimmicks a solid 4 out of 5. There really isn't any glaring flaws here, and what issues I do have could just be luck of the draw. Lastly, let's take a look over these gimmicks and transformation. First up are these Buster rifles. Despite being all gray, there's enough detail and part separation to make them look interesting. However, they're pretty long, so right off the bat you know there's going to be weight issues. Combine that with hands that lack pegs, and you have pure frustration. This is one of those kits where you'll probably need some sticky tack or double-sided tape to get this rifle held up. No exceptions. Just like in the anime, you can connect both guns together. Of course, this just makes the rifle even harder to hold. Having said that, Bandai did include a little extra lip on the butt of this gun that hooks into the chest, allowing you to pull off his iconic shooting pose. I have no idea why Bandai figured this out before something as simple as pegs, but hey, it looks cool and it gives everyone at least one shooting pose they can do out of the box. Next are his token beam sabers. Despite the lack of pegs, he can hold them pretty well, so I'm willing to bet most action poses you do with this kit are going to be beam saber related. You can store both of these beam sabers on these little slots in the wings. Next are these machine guns on the chest. They're a little hard to open, but they're there if you want them. And that's it in terms of weapons. There's not even a shield here. However, since this Gundam didn't have any other weapons in the anime, I can't really fault this kit. Bandai does include a little something extra though, in the form of this dedicated stand. This is such a great touch, as it allows you to really show off these wings. It plugs in from under the backpack, so you don't have any crazy part swapping to do. However, it's kinda limited in terms of posing. The arm only has straight up and bent slightly forward, so a true action base is definitely an upgrade. But still, it's great to have this included, especially for beginners who may not have an extra action base on standby. And finally, moving on to that transformation, well, for lack of a better word, it's pointless. All you do is fiddle with the legs for a second, drop the shoulders, then fold the wings around the body. It looks fine for what it is, but there's really no reason to ever use this transformation. But again, I can't find fault with this model kit, since this is exactly how it transforms in the anime. It's also really easy to pull off, so you can try it once, then never again. And that about rounds out the gimmicks. While you don't get much, it's everything it had in the anime. However, the lack of pegs for the Buster Rifle is really disappointing, especially since you don't get many other options for weapons. Still, you can do the Buster Rifle pose and you get a dedicated stand. So I'll have to give these gimmicks another 4.5 out of 5. If it could just hold up the rifle, it would have been perfect. Okay, time to wrap this up for an average score. The build was a 4 out of 5. It's incredibly basic, which can be a plus for beginners. The appearance was a 4.5 out of 5. It's nowhere near as bad as people would lead you to believe. The articulation is another 4 out of 5. You can do most of the poses you want, but the wings can cause issues. And the gimmicks received another 4.5 out of 5. It's everything he had in the anime, but he can't hold up the rifles. Tallying all that up, dividing, and of course rounding, this Master Grade Wing Gundam Zero receives a 4.3 out of 5. More accurately in terms of a percentage, it receives an 85%. That sounds just right for this kit. If you're into Gundam Wing, or you're looking for an easy kit to start a Master Grade collection, this guy would be for you. For everyone else, you'll probably want to look into the Wing Gundam TV version. That kit has a bit more going on, and its implementation of the Buster Rifle and transformation are leaps and bounds better than this one. Still, this kit holds up pretty well, and if you're dying for a Wing Zero Endless Waltz kit, then there's no reason to wait for a 2.0. This kit is still a solid buy. Alright, thanks for watching, and feel free to leave any comments or questions below. I'm always more than happy to get back to you. You can also follow me on Instagram at redheadphone6, where I post updates, work in progress builds, the whole deal. Alright, thanks for watching, and see you next time.